In 1162, a boy was born in one of the most brutal places on earth. No kingdom, no palace, no army, just the freezing steppes of Mongolia, a land of warring tribes. A land where life was short, loyalty meant nothing, and the strong survived by destroying the weak. His father was poisoned by enemies before he turned 10. His family was abandoned to starve in the wilderness. He was captured and enslaved as a teenager. By every measure, this boy should have died young and been forgotten. Instead, he became the most successful conqueror in human history. At its peak, his empire covered 24 million square kilometers, more than the Roman Empire, more than Alexander the Great, more than anyone before or since. His name was Temujin. The world would come to know him as Genghis Khan. This is his story. To understand Genghis Khan, you first need to understand the world he was born into. Mongolia in the 12th century was not a country. It was a collection of constantly warring tribes, the Mongols, the Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, each fighting the others for horses, livestock, and survival. There were no cities, no writing, no central government, just tribes, horses, and endless grasslands stretching to the horizon. Temujin was born into the Borjigin clan, the son of a minor tribal chieftain named Yasuge. According to legend, he was born clutching a blood clot in his right hand, which the Mongols took as a sign that he was destined for greatness. When Temujin was 9 years old, his father arranged a marriage alliance with a neighboring tribe and left him there to work for his future wife's family, a common custom at the time. On the way home, his father Yasuge stopped to eat with a group of Tatars. They recognized him as an enemy and poisoned his food. He died before reaching home. When the news reached his clan, they did something that would define Temujin's entire life. They abandoned his family. A widow with young children was a burden, not an asset. The clan took their animals and left. Temujin, his mother, and his siblings were left alone on the steppe with almost nothing, surviving on roots, berries, and whatever small animals they could catch. For years, they lived on the edge of starvation. It was in those years, cold, hungry, and abandoned, that Temujin learned the lesson that would drive everything he did. Trust no one. Build your own power. Never be vulnerable again. As Temujin grew older, the enemies his father had made came looking for him. When he was around 15, a rival tribe called the Taichuts raided his family's camp. They captured Temujin and forced him to wear a kangu, a heavy wooden collar used to restrain prisoners, and kept him as a slave. He eventually escaped with the help of a sympathetic tribesman, hiding in a river for hours to avoid being recaptured. But the hardships kept coming. Shortly after his marriage to a young woman named Borte, a tribe called the Merkits raided his camp in revenge for an old grievance against his father. For most men in Mongolia, that would have been the end of the story. Temujin did something different. Instead of accepting his loss, he did what no tribesman typically did. He asked for help. He reached out to two powerful allies, his blood brother Jamuka and a chieftain named Togrul, who owed a debt to his father. Together they raised an army and rescued Borte. It was a small victory, but it revealed something important about Temujin that his enemies would consistently underestimate. He was willing to set aside his pride and build alliances when others would have fought alone and lost. That ability to unite people who had never cooperated before would become his greatest weapon. Through his 20s and 30s, Temujin built his power methodically and ruthlessly. He defeated rival tribe after rival tribe, not just through military force, but through a combination of brilliant strategy, psychological warfare, and an unprecedented approach to loyalty. In traditional Mongolian tribal culture, when you conquered an enemy, you killed the leaders and enslaved the rest. Temujin did something radical. He offered the defeated warrior a choice. Join him as equals, not slaves, and share in the wealth of future conquests, or die. Most chose to join. He also did something that had never been done before on the steppes. He organized his army not by tribal affiliation, but by units of 10, 100, and 1,000. a decimal military system that mixed warriors from different tribes together, breaking old loyalties and creating a new identity, Mongol. He promoted officers based on merit and loyalty, not bloodline. He shared plunder equally. He protected the families of his soldiers. In a world where every man fought for his own tribe, Temujin was building something new, an army that fought for him. By 1206, he had done what no one had managed in centuries. He had united all the Mongolian tribes under a single banner. At a great assembly called the Kurultai, the tribal leaders gathered on the banks of the Onan River and proclaimed him the supreme ruler of all Mongolia. They gave him a new title, Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. He was approximately 44 years old. The conquest of the world was about to begin. What followed was the most rapid territorial expansion in human history. In 1209, Genghis Khan turned south and invaded the Western Xia dynasty in what is now northern China. It fell. In 1211, he turned east and attacked the Jin dynasty, the most powerful empire in East Asia, with a population of 50 million people and fortifications that had held for centuries. The Great Wall didn't stop him. By 1215, the Jin capital, modern-day Beijing, was burning. Then he turned west. The Khwarezmian Empire stretched from Persia to Central Asia, one of the wealthiest and most powerful empires of the Islamic world. Its ruler, Shah Muhammad II, made a fatal mistake. He executed Genghis Khan's trade envoys. It was the last mistake he ever made. What followed was one of the most devastating military campaigns in history. City after city fell. Samarkand, Bukhara, Urgench, centers of Islamic civilization that had flourished for centuries, were destroyed in months. Contemporary accounts describe rivers running black with ink from the libraries that were burned, and red with the blood of those who tried to resist. Genghis Khan's generals pursued Shah Muhammad across Persia until he died as a fugitive on a small island in the Caspian Sea, alone, humiliated, and forgotten. By the time Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire stretched from the Pacific coast of China to the Caspian Sea, an area of 24 million square kilometers home to 100 million people, and he had conquered it in just 21 years. History has never quite decided what to make of Genghis Khan. On one hand, the numbers are staggering. Historians estimate that the Mongol conquests caused the deaths of 40 million people, roughly 10% of the entire world's population at the time. Some regions of Central Asia lost up to 75% of their population. Cities that had existed for 1,000 years simply ceased to exist. By any measure, it was one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. But here is where it gets complicated. Within the empire he built, Genghis Khan was remarkably progressive by the standards of his time. He established the Yasa, a legal code that applied equally to everyone, including himself. He declared religious freedom across the empire at a time when Europe was burning heretics and the Islamic world was fighting religious wars. He reopened and protected the Silk Road, enabling trade and cultural exchange between East and West on a scale that hadn't been seen since Rome. He was illiterate, yet he surrounded himself with scholars, administrators, and advisors from every culture he conquered. He promoted people based on ability, not birth. He was, simultaneously, the greatest destroyer and one of the greatest connectors in human history. Whether you see him as a genius or a monster depends entirely on which side of his army you are standing on. In the summer of 1227, while campaigning against the Western Xia, Genghis Khan died. He was approximately 65 years old. The exact cause of his death remains unknown. Accounts mention a fall from a horse, illness, or wounds in battle. His final wish was that his burial site remain secret, so that no enemy could ever desecrate his grave. His soldiers honored that wish. According to legend, everyone who witnessed the burial procession was killed. The site was then ridden over by horses until no trace remained. To this day, the tomb of Genghis Khan has never been found, but his legacy was impossible to hide. His sons and grandsons continued the conquests, extending the empire into Russia, Poland, Korea, Persia, and the Middle East. His grandson, Kublai Khan, would eventually rule China and become the most powerful man on earth. The Mongol Empire at its peak was the largest contiguous land empire in history, and it all began with a boy left to starve on the Mongolian steppe. What do we make of Genghis Khan 800 years later? Perhaps the most honest answer is this: he was a product of his world. A world where violence was the only currency that mattered, where survival required ruthlessness, and where power was the only protection against the cruelty he had experienced as a child. He took those lessons and applied them on a scale that no one before or since has matched. Was he a visionary? Absolutely. Was he a monster? By any modern standard, yes. Was he the most consequential military leader in human history? Almost certainly. The world he created, the connected, trade-linked Eurasia of the 13th and 14th centuries, laid the groundwork for the global economy we live in today. Even the Black Death, which killed a third of Europe in the 1340s, traveled along the trade routes his empire had opened. For better and for worse, Genghis Khan didn't just conquer the world, he reshaped it. If you made it this far, you now know more about Genghis Khan than most people will ever learn in school. Next week, we're going inside the most mysterious civilization in the ancient world, the Egyptians. Specifically, the pharaoh who tried to destroy Egypt's gods and replace them with just one. His own priests turned against him. His name was erased from history, and for 3,000 years, no one even knew he existed. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop a comment below. Who do you think was the greater conqueror, Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great? We'll see you next week.